In South Africa, there is an uneven spread of rural-urban. Many stations, I would say maybe almost like 60-40, 60 in urban and 40 in rural. But the plan from the licensing and from the government support program is to spread community radio in almost every district municipality. And this far, we are almost completing every district municipality has a community radio station, which evenly spreads, therefore, community radio in between urban and rural, except that, of course, the rural areas would have more business ground to support community radio, and the rural needs more and more support. The MDDA, which is the Media Development and Diversity Agency, established to support community radio, has got a monitoring and evaluation unit whose task is to monitor not only the funding support that the MDDA provides, but also the impact of community radio. And we've got a study that we are conducting currently, which will give some socio-economic indicators in terms of the impact of community radio. There is an organization that collects music levies as part of music rights. It's called SAMRO. All broadcasters do have to contribute to that levy, and what is being negotiated is a smaller contribution for community radio. But in principle, community radio understands why it has to contribute, but of course, because it is not for profit, it is negotiating to pay lower contributions. Not in a organized way as you suggest here, but yes, of course, interviewing musicians, introducing their music is part of a programming genre, and which is good for radio, both good for the musician and for the radio station and for listeners. But over and above that, you still just do need to have some agreement that will ensure that you fairly contribute to the musicians, given that you play their music. There is nothing wrong with starting small, and I think we also went through the same process, where in some stations started 6 hours, others 12 hours, because you do need the content to go on air. You don't want to be on air for the sake of being on air. But of course, we then adopted in investing in capacity building, content production, content development, so as to enable them to increase their hours, because for them to sustain listenership, you do need to increase your hours so that whenever listeners decide to tune on your radio station, they can find you. But it goes step by step. Some stations started 24 hours, others started 6 hours. 2 hours is a bit too low, but as long as there's a plan to increase the broadcast hours. It is very important to invest in content development, because content is queen or king, whichever way. And what we did in South Africa was to create, as part of our fund, a program wherein we support community radio stations who come and produce a project where they partner with NGOs on specific themes. It may be health or education or job creation, and they produce those programs. They cost the cost of producing those programs, and then apply for funding, and we give funding for that, because we think relevant content is key to growing your listenership and therefore sustaining your radio station. News and current affairs is the core of any broadcasting service. In South Africa, any broadcasting service, whether it's commercial, public or community, has to provide news and current affairs by law, because it is in the public interest to provide that information. The only rule is you must make sure that news are accurate, fair, and therefore professionally produced. And we have an independent regulator that is established by law and protected in terms of the constitution of the country for it to operate independently. And it is then the one that judges the adherence to the code of conduct of broadcasting services and adherence to professional standards. But over and above it, there is then the self-regulatory body established by the broadcasters themselves, who also ensures that that is kept to standard. But if, as a listener, you are not satisfied with the ruling of the self-regulatory body, you can take your complaint to the independent regulator, who will then adjudicate your complaint and give a ruling that should be in the public interest. That's a very important futuristic question. I see all coexisting. In South Africa, for example, you'll find community radio stations using Twitter, using Facebook, using all the social media to add value to their programming, to community participation. So indeed, in the nutshell, they can all coexist. Internet, radio, social media, all these other forms, they just give more options, and what is required by any broadcaster is, in your business model, to be innovative and creative and see how best can you make use of the advent of social media to enhance your programming.